Flights are pricey, planning feels chaotic, and that trip that keeps getting pushed because you're too busy or travel's too expensive. Welcome to Points, Cards, and Travel. I'm Ross, the founder of Itinerary Boss. I've made the mistakes of doing this for 10 plus years so you don't have to. Each week, you'll get practical tools, point strategies, and expert guests with real use cases so you can travel better for way less using points and miles. Today's guest on this episode is Chris Reichenbach. If you're a business owner, real estate investor, or just wanting to learn next level money strategies, this episode's for you. You'll hear how he funded a $140,000 renovation, how to leverage 0% interest credit cards, one of my personal favorite things to do, especially if you're starting a business or a real estate investor, as well as how he saved over $6,000 on his Hawaii trip where he proposed to his now wife and only took $66 out of his pocket. This is going to be an awesome episode. And this is one of our favorite things to do is bring real life travel stories and next level operators to you. Now on with the show. Quick thing before we bring on our guest. If you're new here, go ahead and grab my free 5-step roadmap to your next free 5-star luxury vacation and the one card that gets you there, which you can find in the show notes. Now let's bring on our guest and get into it. Hey, Chris, welcome to Points, Cards, and Travel.
Yeah, Ross, thanks for having me on. Super excited for this.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, man. I know I came on yours a couple of weeks ago, and we both got the chance to go on the Bigger Pockets Real Estate Rookie episode. So we're going to be talking all things points, cards, travel, and how to do it with real estate from someone who got into it like yourself, just doing that. So yeah, would love to just learn a little bit more, right? Before you started using credit cards strategically, like how did you feel about credit cards and kind of was there any sort of fear, anything like that?
Yeah, so kind of going a little bit farther back, throughout high school, they taught us the Dave Ramsey way. Hey, no credit, no nothing. You have to pay for everything in cash. And, for people, it either goes into the back of your brain and nothing happens, or you get scared to death. So that's what we kind of had, you know, growing up and going through high school and college. I never had credit cards, never wanted to use them. And then, so I was just scared of them. I thought by having one open, you were going to be getting charged monthly for it. And I said, yeah, I don't really need that. And then, so I was really scared to death of it until I was trying to figure out how to renovate my own live-in renovation. And it's like, okay, hard money doesn't work for this. I go on Bigger Pockets and I have somebody say, hey, you can do this on 0% business cards. And I said, I don't know about that. So he said, no, it's super simple. He walked me through it and still wasn't convinced at that point. So I started looking for podcasts, breaking down credit cards, and ended up on the Travel Hacking Moms. I don't think that's what they're named anymore. And they just broke it down super simply. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is a whole other world, and dove straight in.
I love it, man. It's so true. And I always like to ask that question originally because similarly, right? Similar background. It wasn't never open a credit card, but it was debt is bad, which I'm glad that right from an earlier age I was taught that because bad debt is bad, right? If you go get a credit card and then you like I don't look at the when I look at the APR, if it says 28, 40%, whatever, I'm honestly not looking at that because I'm paying it down every single time. But when you first get into it, it's right. The first thing is if you open it up, it's going to hurt your credit score. It's going to do this. It's going to do that. Like you said, the Dave Ramsey thing. So similarly, I was in the same boat. And that's why I like to ask you. And that's cool where then we'll start talking about real estate because people aren't going and buying these huge apartment complexes, these commercial properties, right? Places, right? Like you have to have debt to do that. So this is where some of these strategies get into. So I'm excited to dive in a little bit more. But yeah, tell us a little bit more about, your background with then getting into houses. Like it sounds like you were doing some flips, renovating, like kind of that. And then were there specific, you mentioned some hard money stuff. Like were there challenges that you ran into when it came to funding?
Yeah, so I'll kind of start back from the beginning because that's where it really started. So back at the end of 2022, I bought my own personal house. It's just like a little two bed, one bath, 850 square feet, and it was a fixer upper. Needed floors, window, updates to the kitchen, needed an entire bathroom. It turned out to be around like $40,000 so of work that needed done. And obviously, you don't have that money sitting. It's like I just graduated college, I just started my first job. You don't have the money for it. So I'm looking around, looking at hard money. And that's when I stumbled into the 0% interest. I just followed what this guy told me because he said, all right, you want to build relationships with the Megs? And I said, okay. So I opened my first Amex Gold card. And he said, all right, once you hit that bonus, then you're going to open this 0% blue business card. And I said, okay, that makes sense. And by that time, I started to feel a little bit more comfortable with the credit cards. I dove into it and realized, oh my gosh, like you can travel for free because at the end of his little message, it said, and if you do it all correctly, you could have a pretty nice free vacation. So that was in the back of my mind, but it wasn't the main goal. So after I did that, he said after you get the blue business card and hit that bonus, you ask for a $30,000 um, credit increase. And I said, there's no way I'm going to get this. And I got it. So then I had another blue business card. I had a couple others. I had the 0% APR for over a year to be able to go renovate that house. So I did that. And then I did a refinance to be able to pay off those cards. And I ended up with, I think around that time I had about 6 or 7 cards. I was kind of doing it. It was more on the personal side and not the business. But when I went full time into flipping houses, because as soon as I pulled the money out of that house, I quit the job that I was in at that time. It was kind of like it was a sales job. It wasn't really sales. It was more like customer support and, figuring it out. It just wasn't the right fit. And then that's when I got into flipping houses. And that's where it really helped out because I had at this time 2 platinum cards. I had a pretty big limit on credit to where, I didn't have to wait on the hard money draws. I could purchase the house. I found the private money and the hard money to be able to go purchase that. And then through the renovation costs, the hard money refunds you. But you have to have that money up front, which, hey, if you're paying for 20 grand of materials up front, you need to have the access to credit. And that's where the credit cards came in to be able to help move that along. So in the past 2 years now, we've bought, I think it's 12 or 13 houses. And, from that point, we've been able to really figure it out. We've, built up a ton of points. But yeah, from that, we've went through a bad partnership, 2 bad contractors. We're offloading a couple properties, and now we're, focusing on wholesaling.
If this episode is helping you out, could you hit that follow or subscribe button and also leave a quick 5-star rating wherever you're listening? Yeah, and I think for people to take a step back, if you're coming into this and you're not a real estate investor, you're like just starting to get into it or just learning those, what hard money means is from you're getting, it's going to be private money from someone who invests you. So let's just say Chris says, hey, you know what? I have this deal I need to go do. I need $50,000. Say I was the lender, I would say I'm the private lender. I would say, hey, Chris, here's $50,000. I'll do it at we'll just say 12% interest rate because interest rates are at 8%, something like that, right? They can be different, but that's where for people who are learning more about real estate, who might not, be an investor, that's where when Chris is talking about hard money, when you're going in, that's what that means. And no, I agree, man. It's the 0% interest cards are huge. So I think one thing, like if you're just getting started as a business owner, if you have a rental property and you're just starting it out as a rental, or you're buying like just a rental property as an investment property, the 0% interest cards are a game changer. And you can find those. We have those on our website. But yeah, I mean, like you said, that's if you don't want to, if you go have a big expense that you got to go buy materials, or you just don't want to have to, like if you buy a new property, like I got to spend another 10 to 15 grand on furnishings and I don't want to have to bring that out of pocket right then and there. You're getting a 0% interest loan. Oh, and you're getting points that then you can go use to travel. So I think just from the foundational piece, from a business standpoint, that's one thing that a lot of people don't even realize that they can do because they're like, oh, I don't have this massive cash flowing business. So if you're just buying a property for my itinerary boss company, when I first started, I got a 0% interest card, right? That was my loan to get jump started. Oh, and it turned into a $5,000 business class seat. So like that's the power of this when you get the right foundational pieces in place. But yeah, to keep it simple, those 0% interest cards are great. And then once you get more into higher dollar, like Chris was mentioning, um, Amex Gold, those ones where you have higher credit limits or no credit limit.
100%.
Can you walk us through? Because I know you have a pretty big one, and I think this will help people who are doing some flips or renovations. But you did one where you spent about 140,000, and how did you fund that then? And were there any mistakes you made along the way that you would say, "Hey, if I now that I know this, like I would have redone it this way"?
Oh yeah, that one's my nightmare property. So some backstory. So my first property went off without a hitch. The contractor I use, his buddies came down from Connecticut. They knocked out the house in 12 days under contract day two, sold it, made a little bit money, and we moved that into this next property. So of course, when we walked it, we said, okay, this is going to be at 110 grand. And I said, if it's anything like that first property, we're, you know, it's going to go great. So obviously from the start, we had bees in the wall, guys couldn't work, delays, and, we get so far into it and we're all of a sudden the contractor didn't pull any permits. So we got hit with all of these permit delays. The whole project ended up going from August to being sold in March the next year. So tons of learning lessons through those, but like any real estate investor is going to tell you, you learn more from the mistakes than you do from anything going right. I mean, I learned some on that first project, but it went so quick and so effortless that I really didn't even have time to really sit and feel. It was only like the closing process that I was able to really feel out to make me feel good about the next one. But when the mistakes happen, that's where you really, really learn. So tons of mistakes through that, whether it was from the purchase, the numbers, because we were projecting it to be about $110,000 renovation. Well, when they don't pull permits and you have to pull in all these other people, more materials, that's what ended up being 140,000. So with me being able to have that credit access, I was able to move the project along. I didn't have to wait for the hard money lenders to, come back to me. They didn't have to approve anything. It was like, all right, what do you guys need next? What materials can we go get to be able to get the ARV or the after repair value that we need? And, our sale numbers were a little bit lower, and that was just kind of with the partner we were working with at that time. But we're able to really use the cards through that process because we had that credit line to be able to push it forward. And we racked up a ton of points from that. And that was more indirectly, like it wasn't directly for the points. It was, hey,
Yeah.
this is what we can use to be able to move this project forward. And I recommend anybody who's, flipping houses, renovating houses, or paying anything related to business and real estate, if your contractors aren't using credit card processing, that's probably you might want to look into that a little bit deeper because all these good contractors are using credit card processing. They're able to use that. And, a lot of the cash is under the table. So if you're, looking to get the points redemptions, then yes, you should be using credit cards for all of your merchants.
100%. And that's where, no, and I appreciate you sharing that. I think the mistakes is where you learn, like you said, you learn the most. We have rentals where, it was smooth sailing for a while, but then shit hits the fan and you're just like, oh man, like we have water damage that happened, Tenet's first day when he moved in, right? So I had to go through that. But luckily knowing that, hey, I know I got a 25 grand, thing that I'm going to have to pay. Insurance has cut me a check. I'm going to go get an Amex Platinum and get a fat bonus that's going to pay
Mhm.
right and those are some things that, and if you are listening, if you have an insurance claim and don't go do this to get the points. But if you actually have something, this is you're able to go get a card, you get the check, and then you can pay that card. You might have a fee on the card. Sometimes vendors take that, but if I'm getting a welcome bonus or it's a business expense, that's a tax deduction that I'm using every single time. And you bring up a great point for some of those contractors. This is kind of what this really clicked for me in 2021 was you got people, oh, 5 grand painting here. You have this there. Oh, we can't use card. Oh, we have to do this rehab, but we don't take card. And I'm like, there's got to be a way, right? I'm not just pouring thousands of dollars into ACH and check. And yeah, there are services like Melio, which if you look in our show notes, it'll take you to a link directly to that. But that's the one we use for all our business transactions, and it's phenomenal. And we recommend it to everyone. But I think people don't know that, and they just default to paying by ACH or check because it's easy, and they aren't aware of that.
Yeah, and I think to build on that point, it's almost safer to use card because we had an instance come up to where a contractor was charging us 2 grand for something and didn't even come and do the work. Well, that was on Amex where I paid it, so all I had to do was reach out to Amex. We were able to submit all the information showing, hey, this guy didn't do any of the work, and we were able to get all of that money refunded. So the cards actually can save you in that perspective because if you're doing ACH, if you're doing paying by check or cash, like once you pay that, that's gone. But the credit, you're able to show like, hey, this was to a merchant, they didn't fulfill that order, and you're able to probably get that money back.
Yeah, no, that is a great point, and I think you and I have lived through it. So but these are, I think, a lot of times people say, okay, how do I maximize my points? And it's like, let's take a step back because the majority of the time it's you have the wrong cards in place. You're using a local bank card that's getting you 1 to 2% cash back. If you don't want to travel, that's totally fine. But if you do, and you're already paying a lot of money personally out of pocket to travel, it's not a good strategy. Or you're using the classic Bank of America, Wells Fargo that, right, your statement balances. So it's like it's always step one. And then for investors, make sure you're getting all those expenses aligned. But I'm curious from your standpoint, outside of what we've talked about, are there other big mistakes that you see people in real estate, buying businesses, because I know you're in that space now, making when they're doing business expenses or bigger renovations?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing when they're specifically looking at using cards, like you said, you're figuring out. Well, first, it's like, what cards do you have? If you're working on a minimum spend to be able to get those bonus points, that card is going to take the priority, whether it gets, 1.5x points or whether it's 5x. And then,
We wanted to thank you for listening in and mention if you want help applying this to your own spending and trip planning strategy, that's exactly what the Reward Strategy Lab community is for. You can find details if you want to join within our show notes. Now, back on with the show.
once you have some cards kind of in the deck and you're not working on a minimum spend, that's where you can really go to maximize. That's like using the business platinum for Amex versus using the business gold. You're going to be able to get more points by the business gold because if you have $100,000 renovation and you get 1.5x on the platinum, what is it for the gold? 3, 4x on materials sometimes.
Yeah, you're two up to 150K on your top two expenses. The platinum just bumped it up to 2x anything over 5 grand. They just
Yeah,
made
so
that change on like materials.
Yeah, so you're able to get so much more, and that's where if you're playing this game, and not to mention it's like what Ross teaches. If you're only playing this game if you're responsible with money, you're using it like a debit card, you're paying it off. So if you're a responsible business owner using it correctly, and you say, okay, well, you know, first, figure out what you want with the points. If you're just refunding yourself, then figure out what gets you the most points. And that's where, once you have the consistent expenses, you're not working on a minimum spend, that's where you can really work on that to figure out, am I just getting 1.5x points on this, or can I use this other card that's going to be able to give me 4 or 5x on a $100,000 renovation? that's 150,000 points versus 4 to 500.
Yeah.
That's where it really spends. And when, like Ross talks about, when you're booking your travel, that's really the big difference, because that's where the money really, or the points really, turn into the cash, rather than, you know, it's just points and I can refund myself a couple $100. That's where you really start to maximize.
Yeah. Well, now the fun starts. Now,
Yeah. The
now that
fun
we've laid
part.
the foundation, because I think it's important, right? Because people sometimes, again, like I mentioned, it's they want to get people want to come to step three when step one, the foundation isn't handled. People think points don't work, and it isn't that they don't work. It's just you got to have the right foundation, kind of the right strategy, and what are you trying to get out of this too? Because if it's a family of five, it might their travel goals might be different than a solo or a couple, right? So it just those are some things that you have to factor in. But I'm curious from your standpoint, right? One, you've done all these renovations, you have these big expenses flowing, you have all these points. Now you're like, okay, cool. What do I need to do with them? What point did you realize, those credit card points could create different opportunities instead of just like you mentioned, statement balances, cash back, Amazon gift cards, all that?
Yeah, so my biggest thing was that I wanted to go to Hawaii. Always wanted to go out there, whether I was going by myself. And, that trip ended up turning me, or ended up with me proposing to my girlfriend at that time, my now wife. So, yeah, really, really cool trip there that ended up working out. And I started looking at how many points would I actually need to be able to get there. And listening to the different podcasts, you see points, yeah, was a big one that worked for me. I looked through some of the different, or I listened to the podcast specifically on booking Hawaii trips. They said, go here. Here's where you can stay. If you have this many points, you can go here. And that's where I was able to kind of put that into points, yeah, and figure out what hotels do I need. There, because that's a simple transfer. Whether you have Chase points or Amex points, you're going to be able to move it. So we had a bunch of Chase points at that time, and we moved that into Hyatt. And then on the Amex side, we transferred a bunch of those over into Marriott, and we had 3 free nights over at a Marriott hotel. So we had 3 free nights at a hotel. We had a couple free nights at the Hyatt place, and we were there for a week, and we saved over $6,000. We paid $66 for flights, hotels, rental car for an entire 7 or 8 days. So that's where the planning really began. And for my blue business cards, I thought they were done. They were in my notebook, or in a folder. I said, yeah, I'm pretty much done using these, because I can't really use them for anything. And then Amex, they offered me the platinum for both cards. And then you get 150 for this one, 150 for this one. All of a sudden, we have a ton of points through the renovation. So that's what was able to really book those for free. And yeah, we booked that trip to Hawaii for an entire week for $66.
Dude, that's awesome. And but those are the cool stories. I think the thing that sticks out is I proposed to my wife there, right? I think
For
it's
sure.
outside of, and that's what I always try to, tell people is outside of the cost savings, outside of the points, outside of, hey, this is the optimization, like all that fun stuff. It comes down to you want to go on a vacation, right? And it's like they make some of these awesome memories that and then also too, it can save you money so you can go do cool things in your life. It's not like, oh, I can't go out to dinner now and do this. It's like, no, you're saving a lot of money that feeds into your overall budget. So I think that's something to think about for people who are listening in. And yeah, it like every year, something that I started when I started dating my now wife was I gifted her a trip. We go somewhere cool, new every year for 10 to 14 days, and all of that's paid on points mostly. Some of those we paid in cash, but there was a reason why because I was saving up for our honeymoon to Thailand and Bali. But it's like, but there's ways that you can do this, and it's more than just the points, right? It's those awesome trips, those memories, and there's ways to get everywhere with points.
100%. I mean, whether you're doing something cool like going to Bali, you're going to Hawaii, I mean, you could be using your points. I mean, think of like a family of five trying to fly and travel. You're trying to figure out rental cars. That's what that can be used for. Like I think about different trips that like we took when we were younger, and you could have had a completely different experience just using your normal spending, whether you're a business owner or just a normal, you know like a W-2 worker, just using your points on your everyday expenses. I mean, this can really maximize your lifestyle, give you really cool vacations, and just all for your normal spending. So, whether you're going to visit family or whether you're taking a luxury trip, I mean, points can do that for you.
Yeah, great point. I mean, it just makes it more attainable. And just think about the families, how damn expensive travel sports are now, right?
Oh my gosh,
You
yeah.
and we have some cool episodes where, I mean, we don't have kids, so I like to bring on people who have done this for years with kids. And if you're listening and you like doing like events, you like go like, and a lot of times like college graduation, they elevate the prices. Or you want to go to, one guy went to a Michigan Rose Bowl game, a Clippers game, and another game all in 2 days using points where hotels were crazy. So it's like those are some of the strategies where if you're going somewhere during those times, or where they're going to jack rates up, those are other things. And also emergencies too, like if some things happen, if you have to book a flight the next day instead of paying five, six, $800, if you have those points sitting there, you can utilize those. So it makes things attainable, and it all goes into your strategy too. Like you said, it can be that domestic trip. And if you are a W-2 worker, like, and you travel for work, that's where you have the competitive advantage. I miss that part, is being a fucking
Oh
road
yeah, my
warrior.
my older brother does that a little bit, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I have all these Hilton points." It's like, man, I'm jealous.
Yeah, yeah. Now, yeah, my wife, she, well, like I was telling you before we got on, she just left for Florida. So my business and our personal spend covers a lot of the big stuff, and then she just racks up, more points for her travel. So it's like, also think about that. If you're a W-2, or you are a real estate investor or small business owner and you have a spouse, like there's strategies where you can combine those in two-player mode and right leverage both those things.
No doubt, no doubt. So that's what we did. We did that with my wife. She's the one that wants to go travel everywhere. She's got Dubai on her list. I know we have Maldives on her list, and um, she likes to go see her family down in Colombia at least once a year. So, being able to do the two player to where it's like I can refer her and she can get the points. So she gets 80,000 for a chase card and I get the 20 back. We made 100 off of that, and then that'll pay for our Colombia trip. So that's something that's really cool as well. And thinking about the bigger trips, it's like, all right, we got to build some points up to be able to take these really really cool ones. So that's kind of the what we're working on right now.
I love it, man. Yeah, if you want to go to Maldives, I got a girl who came on who's been 6 times and going for her seventh, so she knows all
Oh
the
yeah.
spots.
Yeah, see, if I'm going out there, I want like the cabin where you can just jump right off into the water and step outside. If I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it right.
Yeah, oh, 100%. I got a couple people who've come on the show who I'll send you their
Oh
episode,
yeah,
and they'll make sure to show you in the right direction for sure.
sweet.
Cool, man. Well, hey, this was awesome. If there's any one piece of advice you want to leave for people, mindset shift, just things that they can take, go make decisions today, what would that be?
Oh man. Yeah, that's a big one. I'd say mindset is the biggest one because we're taught so much at such a young age, whether it's credit, whether it's, real estate related, building cash, building money. Those are all kind of pre-programmed into us at a very young age. So being able to break outside of that and being able to understand credit, being able to understand debt, once you understand that those are tools to be able to use and it's not bad, then you're going to be able to use it. You're going to be able to build a really cool life and use it to your advantage because it's like taxes. I mean, if you actually figure out the tax game, you're realizing that it's not this big, nasty thing. If you play the tax game correctly, you're going to be way ahead. You're not going to be paying taxes, and it'll probably be paying you. And that's where the wealth generators come from. So on the credit card side, if you understand that these are tools to be able to help you, you know, go do some really cool things like travel, like visit family for a really cheap price, you're going to be way ahead of the rest. And that takes a big mindset shift with all of that, maybe some of the Dave Ramsey stuff, which isn't bad advice for people in debt. But, if you're not in debt, you can be using these strategies and be responsible with them to be able to do some really, really cool things in life.
Yeah, no, you couldn't have said it better, and you touched on the big four, right? And that's yeah, taxes. That when I started diving down that rabbit hole, it was like, okay, this is the especially if you're a real estate investor, if you're high earning W-2. But yeah, again, it's some of those things that were instilled in us when we were younger, and we saw. It's like you also want to be listening to the people who are right. If you're listening to people who've never done it, they haven't done it for a reason. If you're listening to the people who write and you see them doing those specific things, like that's who you want to go take advice from and follow. No, I couldn't agree more, man. No, this was great, Chris. If our listeners want to find you, I know you're doing some cool stuff in the real estate space and the business buying stuff. You also have your own podcast that I was lucky enough to come on and chop it up on points in real estate. Where can they go and find you and follow you?
Yeah, they can go listen to my podcast, the Leadway Wealth Builders podcast. We just passed episode 200 recording today. Your episode's coming out on February 10th. Not sure when this is going to release, but basically it's me just documenting my journey in real estate and business. So from quitting my job, flipping my first house, going through all the pains and struggles, and now, kind of rebuilding and being able to bring on some really, really cool investors and $1 million business owners that I get to interview on my podcast and network with. That's, super, super cool to be able to listen to. And then if you want to follow my journey on Instagram and TikTok, it's just chris.reichenbach. So that's chris.reichenbach.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we'll link everything in the show notes. Chris, really appreciate it and excited for that episode to go live. Excited for this one to go live. He's Chris Reichenbach. I'm Ross Alcorn. We will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate you tuning in today. Before you go, again, if you're new here, grab my free 5-step roadmap to your next free 5-star luxury vacation and the one card that gets you there in the show notes. The main takeaway from today is you don't need more time or money to travel better. You just need a simple plan and the right strategy in place. My final thought is travel is supposed to feel exciting, not overwhelming. Take one thing you learned today, apply it this week, and your next trip gets easier starting now. We'll see you next episode. Really appreciate you tuning in.